Dexter Resurrection will ruin the Dexter series. You know that feeling when a show just won't stay finished? Like it had the perfect run, then fumbled the ending, then tried to fix it, only to make things worse. Yep, that's Dexter. This show has already killed off its main character twice, but apparently death isn't a big deal in the Dexterverse. This franchise keeps crawling out of the grave for one last ride. We watched him fake his death in a hurricane. We saw his son put a bullet in his chest, but somehow Showtime thinks we need another round. Is Dexter Resurrection gonna deliver? Or is this just one last cash grab before they finally bury this series for good? Let's break down why fans are terrified. This might be the moment Dexter's legacy gets dumped in the ocean like one of his victims. Let's be honest, Dexter has a chronic problem with endings. And by that, I mean they cannot finish a story without infuriating their audience. Remember the OG finale? After 8 long seasons of blood, deception, and psychological breakdowns, Dexter ended up becoming a lumberjack. A goddamn lumberjack. Like, did the writers throw darts at a board labeled shitty career changes? He survived a hurricane, faked his death, and then stole the identity of Jim. Dexter has that perfect serial killer ring to it. It is sharp, calculated, and a name that belongs in a crime documentary. But Jim, that's not scary. That's the guy asking if you want to supersize your fries. And somehow, that's the energy Dexter New Blood brought to the table. Everyone thought, all right, they know they screwed up. Surely they won't mess up the ending. But somehow, they managed to fumble it all over again. Dexter dies, but not in a way that feels earned. Instead, it felt like the writers just wanted to be done with it and move on. And now Showtime is sliding into our DMs with Resurrection, expecting us to trust them again? Please. At this point, it's not about their ability to tell a good story. It's about whether they can end a show without making us want to smash our TVs in frustration. Now, here's the million-dollar question. How is it even possible that Dexter is alive? The last time we saw Dexter, he was bleeding out in the snow, thanks to the bullet Harrison put in his chest. This wasn't some vague, open-ended death. This was a point-blank execution. Dexter literally chose to die. It was supposed to be his redemption arc. And now, Resurrection has to explain how he just shrugged it off. This is some comic book death nonsense. You know how in comics nobody actually stays dead? Superman, Batman, Captain America, they all die and just come back like it's a normal Tuesday. The problem here is that it takes all the impact out of death. Kind of a big flaw for a show built around a guy who kills people. We've already watched Dexter cheat death more times than we can count. So at this point, bringing him back again just feels repetitive and way less exciting. The more they pull this resurrection BS, the less we care. If death has no stakes, neither does the story. Be honest, what's left to say about Dexter Morgan? We've had 8 seasons, a revival, and now a prequel. We've seen him as a serial killer, a dad, a husband, a brother, an employee, and even a damn lumberjack. Like, what else could there possibly be left to see? By the end of New Blood, Dexter has a character-defining moment. He realized he wasn't just following the code. He was just a monster making excuses. His death was tragic, but fitting. So what's Resurrection gonna do? Undo all that character development? Revert him to Season 1 Dexter? That's the issue with dragging a completed character arc back into the spotlight. You either have to rewrite their growth, or just use the most basic textbook plots that most cash grab shows use. And that takes us to our next concern, the Miami Vice problem. One of the things we know for sure is that Resurrection is taking us back to Miami. At first, that sounds cool. The neon streets, the creepy contrast between sunshine and serial murder. But realistically, it's gonna be a disaster. Let's not forget, as far as Miami Metro is concerned, Dexter Morgan is as dead as he could be. Dude's boat got shredded in Hurricane Laura. They held a whole funeral, and Batista probably ugly cried into his fedora. So, how exactly is Dexter supposed to stroll back in without setting off every alarm in Miami? Plus, in New Blood, Batista realized Dexter was alive, and likely the Bay Harbor Butcher. Yeah, returning to Miami isn't just a wait you're not dead situation. It's a full-blown, hey, weren't you that guy who secretly killed like dozens of people while working right next to us? There's literally no way he can just reappear in Miami like it's a video game. No excuse is going to make that work. And if the writers try to hand-wave it with some lazy excuse, it'll be as convincing as when Harrison suddenly showed up in New Blood like he used Apple Maps to find his long-lost serial killer dad. Little did we know that Harrison's appearance would only be the beginning of our concerns. The big question everyone's asking is, what's the plan for Harrison? The kid's been on a non-stop tragic journey since he first appeared on screen. At first, we see him as a blood-soaked baby. Before we know it, he's living it up in Argentina with Hannah. Fast forward, he's a moody teenager with serial killer instincts. In a bad twist, he kills his father and disappears, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. And do you want to know the crazy part? New Blood actually gave him a solid ending. He rejected Dexter's code and dipped, finally breaking the cycle of murder and daddy issues. It wasn't exactly a happy ending, but at least it was an ending. But what about in Resurrection? Jack Alcott is back as a series regular, meaning Harrison is either back on his I want to be like my dad arc, or Showtime just decided to flip the script on him. Makes us wonder what the point of that emotional finale was. Are we really supposed to believe that Harrison had a sudden change of heart after executing his own father? If so, then what was all that build-up for? And if you think Harrison's arc is messy, wait until we talk about the rest of the cast. Take Deborah, for example. Her death was already one of the dumbest in TV history. Dexter just unplugs her life support, sails into the ocean, and dumps her body like he's taking out the trash. In New Blood, she's reduced to being Dexter's weird ghost conscience. And what about Batista? Dude spent years being one of the few genuinely good cops in Miami Metro. Then, New Blood finally gave him his moment of realization. Dexter was the butcher, only for the show to end right after. No payoff and no closure. And don't even get me started on Quinn, Masuka, and the rest of the Miami crew. These people spent 8 seasons chasing shadows, only for Dexter to Houdini his way out of consequences again. Is it really too much to ask for to let someone get a satisfying arc in Dexter? Even Rita, who basically existed just to get fridged for Dexter's character development, at least stayed dead. But honestly, with the way the resurrection is going, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought back Rita as a ghost or something. This isn't just about Dexter. It's part of a much bigger problem. Because apart from all the plot holes, this show is up against the entire wave of unnecessary TV revivals that just won't let dead shows stay dead. We've seen it over and over. The X-Files, Prison Break, Heroes, That 70s Show, Will and Grace, shows that were great in their prime, dragged back from the grave for one last round, that the fans mostly just found disappointing. At this point, audiences are straight up exhausted. It's like a bad ex who keeps texting, "Hey, you up?" at 2 a.m. We've moved on, but they just won't let go. Let's face it, Showtime isn't bringing Dexter back because they've got a brilliant new story. They're doing it to cash in on a recognizable brand. It's all about the money, not creativity, and the audience can sense that from a mile away. To figure that out, let's talk about 3 potential ways Dexter Resurrection is about to completely fumble the bag. Scenario 1, Dexter's back on the run. This one's the most likely because Michael C. Hall is confirmed to return. So somehow, Dexter survives a point-blank gunshot wound. Either Harrison is a stormtrooper-level bad shot, or plot armor is just built different. Now he's on the run again because the world finally knows he's the Bay Harbor Butcher. At the same time, we get Batista and Quinn leading a nationwide manhunt, while Dexter plays hide-and-seek, still killing but way sloppier this time. Harrison also realizes that his dad survived and has to decide for a second time if he's Team Dexter or Team Justice. It all leads to some dramatic showdown, probably back in Miami, for nostalgia bait. We just did this in New Blood. At this point, they're just hitting shuffle on old plot points. Scenario 2, Harrison takes over. God help us all. Harrison is now dealing with the consequences of killing his father and the fear that he might just be like Dexter. So now he's hallucinating Dexter like Dexter hallucinated Harry. Wow, so deep. Angela Bishop is still trying to figure out what the hell happened, and Dexter becomes the new ghost coach, whispering murder tips from beyond the grave. Maybe they even bring back Deb, Rita, or Hannah as Force ghosts to remind us that this franchise is running out of living characters. The big problem, Harrison is about as interesting as a wet cardboard box. In New Blood, he worked because he was a foil to Dexter. On his own, the character just wouldn't work. He's a budget version of his dad, and nobody wants that. Scenario 3. The FBI wants to join forces with Dexter. Now, here's the worst possible idea, and the one I fear they might actually use. Dexter gets caught, and instead of rotting in prison, the FBI recruits him to help catch other serial killers. This is exactly the kind of terrible idea that gets approved these days. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happens. But yet, the real problem isn't the potentially bad plots Resurrection would bring us. It's that every new season actively makes the original show worse. The first 4 seasons were legendary. They made us root for a serial killer and delivered one of the hardest gut punch finales in TV history. But every time they bring Dexter back from the dead, it cheapens everything. But let's be real, we're all still gonna watch it. No matter how much we complain, no matter how bad the last reboot was, we're all secretly hoping they somehow don't screw it up this time. History tells us this is a lost cause. If this season somehow sticks the landing, I'll be the first to say I was wrong. But until then, I'm keeping my expectations so low they're at the bottom of the ocean where Dexter dumped his victims. It's just safer that way.